Lil Rel, you've been in comedies, horror films, holiday films, animated series. How does this film about Chicago, especially, maybe from a parent viewpoint, kind of hit you differently?
I mean, this movie is, and it's interesting because I've watched almost every screening, which I'm probably going to continue to do that, just because I do feel like outside, I believe it's a love letter to Chicago, but also to myself and my childhood. And for instance, we had a screening yesterday, and I had a lot of my friends show up, and even a lot of my family. It just puts us into this very nostalgia. Like even the Bulls conversation was fast. I remember having those weird arguments about who our favorite player was, and it could be so random too. Like, yeah, my Craig Hodges. Yeah, okay, it's just random. But it's just it put me in this beautiful place to remember in '92. Not from necessarily what the events that happened, but just like I remember just those everyday, regular, interesting, fun days. And then and I don't even know if I've even said this really, but I think about the way I had to use my imagination in '92. Like I had to imagine that I'll be able to do what I'm doing now. Like you mentioned all those stuff before. All that stuff was like a dream. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't real yet. And so when I watch this movie and then I think about being their age and I'm like, oh, I was dreaming about doing this. Yeah. It's really fascinating. So this movie has taken me on a bunch of different emotional rides so far.
Yeah, because one moment, you're Gian and Blake's age, and then you blink an eye and you're our age.
I mean, you're staring at the ceiling. I love when I just remember doing that, and for them they saw stars. For me, I saw stars. It wasn't necessarily the sky stars, but movie and TV stars, and how it would fit into that universe. So I don't know, it's very deep.
Talk a little bit about setting this film in the early 1990s, because of course we talk a little bit about Bulls fever at that point, but also Cabrini-Green, that story being in the news as well.
Yeah, 1992 was really the year that put Chicago on the map, I think, from the sports teams to also what was happening in Cabrini-Green, when Dontrell Davis was shot and killed as he was walking to school in Cabrini-Green, it was a really huge loss for the community and for the city. And it was a transitional moment because it was so critical, the next steps that the city would take would really determine the future of public housing. And that was a moment where all this national attention was suddenly on this public housing project that prior to this moment really wasn't, known much outside of Chicago. And that story of Dontrell and what happened to him in the neighborhood kept coming up in interviews that I had with former residents. So it made sense to set the story at that time about this community that had this complicated relationship with their own home. It was at once a place that was really difficult and challenging to live there for all the reasons that are part of the dominant narrative about this place, but also was beautiful and had lots of joys, and especially when I was talking to people who grew up as kids there, it was a really special place to them, and it was the only place they'd known as home. So that really was what drew me to their stories. I was surprised, and I was learning new things all the time, and their stories of home resonated with me.
What I love about you two is that it's about friendship. It could be set anywhere, in Beverly Hills, in outer space, or, somewhere in Chicago, but it's ultimately about friendships, your first loves, which are your friends, your family, your community. Talk a little bit about that role and the friendship that both of you have. Blake, if you want to go ahead and start.
It was pretty organic. When we started, Miss Minhal said stuff about the rehearsals, and that helped us a lot.
Even before the rehearsals, we had joined Zoom meetings, and we read over the script, and we practiced together. That gave us, a little chemistry to go into the filming and actually, resonate with each other while,
Yeah, I gave you guys prompts, there would be some scenarios, improvised scenarios, and then they would talk about, like they would basically act out what their characters would do. And this was all over Zoom. This was before we met in person. And then we continued doing those exercises, and then eventually it was reading the scenes. So they spent a lot of time together.
That stuff was fun.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun.
It really did build a lot of chemistry.
Yeah, we spent so much time virtually before we met in person.
Yeah.
That was what, and this is during pandemic time, so it was really like the only way we could do it until it was like a few weeks before we started filming.
Quickly before we go, quick sentence. Did you think your wedding proposal was going to go as viral as it did?
I didn't know about this.
Yeah, I had proposed at Beyonce concert.
That
I mean,
I had seen it.
I thought it was gonna be cooler than what it was. I didn't know it would be me running from the restroom, couldn't find my seat, getting on one knee, and she's like, "What you doing down there?" And I'm like, "I'm trying to propose." You know, it was a lot.
That's hilarious.
It was very,
Oh my god.
yeah, it was a thing.
That's crazy.
That is amazing. Thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.